even the pessimists, the skeptics who are in part of this world, believe that it will only be a decade or two at most before the world looks radically different as a result of AI. I met one person at this conference who said that they had stopped saving for retirement because they believe that they, in the post-AGI world, money will have no meaning. And so what does it matter if you have a 401k 25 years from now if the robots are, serving all of our material needs? Well, Casey, you and I recently went to a very interesting event together.
We did. Normally we hang out mostly in the studio, but this was a case where we went out into the real world and we met people and we did a little bit of sort of interviewing and what they used to call in journalism school, shoe leather journalism, Kevin.
Yes, but nobody wears leather shoes anymore, so now it's shoe rubber journalism or something.
Yeah.
So this was an AI conference in Berkeley, California called The Curve, and it was a very interesting event. It was put on by a group of AI researchers and enthusiasts, and the way it was sort of announced is that this was going to be a place for people from all sides of the AI sort of spectrum to get together and put aside their differences and find some common ground, whether you are an AI doomer who believes that AI is going to kill us all or an accelerationist who believes that we should be going faster. The idea was to kind of bring together these warring tribes of AI and kind of hash out some differences and try to find some common ground. And I was very curious to know sort of your initial impressions, because I had been to this venue before. It's a venue called Lighthaven. It's a former hotel that has been kind of converted into an event space by a group of rationalists. But you had not been there before, and this was your first time at one of these events. So what did you make of it?
I mean, my main takeaway, Kevin, was just that I feel like the rest of the world does not know how deeply that many of the people working to build AI believe that we are on the precipice of a profound transformation. And there's no way to say that without sounding like you're just sort of contributing to the hype. But despite everything that I just said, this was not a hypey conference. This was a bunch of people who took for granted the idea that, a super intelligence is almost here, and we're reckoning with the implications of that. And so for me, as somebody who had never spent that much concentrated time with people who had that set of beliefs, it was really eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of place where, like, you walk in, and on the wall is a big poster with some timelines on it. And the timelines go from sort of, present day to the year 2280. And on these timelines are sort of various scenarios, such as how long until 95% of current human remote work can be done more cheaply by an AI. How long until the first year with more than 10% U.S. economic growth because of AI? How long until medical advancements are made that allow humans to live past 150? And the one that really caught my attention is how long until there is a Dyson sphere around the sun. Now, Casey, do you know what a Dyson sphere is?
No, I didn't. And everyone at the conference made fun of me for not knowing what a Dyson sphere is. So what is it? And honestly, when did you find out what a Dyson sphere is?
I have known what a Dyson sphere is for many years. It's like a staple of science fiction and of kind of these like thought experiments about what happens after the singularity. But basically, a Dyson sphere has nothing to do with Dyson vacuums, which I know is what you were thinking. But basically, this is the idea that you could kind of someday put like a bunch of satellites around the sun and just kind of like collect the energy that it puts out and like harness it and capture that energy and use it for your purposes. So you would basically surround the sun with a bunch of solar cells and just capture all the energy, and then we would have no more energy needs.
Well, and my first thought, Kevin, is how do you stop the Dyson sphere from being burned up by the sun?
Great question. We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
But people do think that this is one of the sort of far future scenarios that we could see. And so what I found remarkable about this particular poster with all these timelines on it was that you had to like put a pin in the timeline for when you think this stuff would happen. And even for the Dyson sphere, which was sort of the most far out futuristic thing, I was surprised by how many predictions said that this would arrive sometime in the 2030s or possibly the 2040s. Like, a lot of these people were imagining a world in which within the next 2 decades, we will have a flock of literal satellites around the sun capturing its energy.
Yeah, and I do think it speaks to, maybe a minor flaw in the conference, Kevin, which is despite the fact that they wanted to bring together all sides of the AI debate, as you said, they really mostly found a bunch of people who thought superintelligence is going to be here very soon, and also were very, very nervous about what that means.
Yeah, there were several different kinds of clusters of people at this conference. I would say the biggest by far were the sort of AI safety people, the people who are sometimes described as doomers or rationalists, the people who have been warning about the risks of advanced AI for years. But I did see, for example, that one of the authors of the book AI Snake Oil was there and had an interesting sort of debate with former Hard Fork guest Daniel Cocatello, formerly of OpenAI, about sort of whether, his position was that basically AI is kind of just a normal technology, and that it won't have these sort of outsized effects on the world, at least in the time frames that a lot of people at this conference are thinking. So that view was represented, but I would say it was the minority view.
Well, and I also attended that debate, and it sort of felt like the debate was like superintelligence will get here in 2026 versus superintelligence will get here in 2028. Like that sort of felt like the debate.
Right, but that is I think that is a useful sort of calibration for people who are not spending a lot of time in the world of AI, is that even the pessimists, the skeptics who are in part of this world believe that it will only be a decade or two at most before the world looks radically different as a result of AI.
Yeah. I think that's right. Well, so do you want to maybe talk about a thing or two that you saw at the conference that maybe taught you something new or maybe made you see this world a little bit differently?
One thing that really struck me is that you really are starting to see evidence that people are changing the way they live their lives based on this, I think, quite sincere belief that the world is about to look radically different. I met one person at this conference who said that they had stopped saving for retirement because they believe that they, in the post-AGI world, money will have no meaning. And so what does it matter if you have a 401k 25 years from now if the robots are, serving all of our material needs?
That's what I would say if I ever lost my life savings by gambling, Kevin. I would say, well, look, AGI is almost here. What does it matter?
Yeah, it's true. I met another person who said that they are trying to get like really fit and really healthy and really hot because like when intelligence is just like in a machine somewhere, like being smart won't be a status indicator anymore. Like we'll kind of go back to a very superficial way of like evaluating status because the AIs are going to be so much smarter than us that all that'll matter is your like puny human body.
Wait, no, this is the worst news that you could possibly tell me, Kevin. I can't be out there competing on my looks. It's not going to work out.
I think you're going to be great.
Well, maybe AI will, I don't know, be able to give me some kind of facelift or something. I don't know.
But what kind of conversations were you having? What stuck out to you about this event?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, one thing I found interesting was just how many of them are already thinking about geopolitical conflict, right? So, we love to, on this show, talk about, well, yeah, what will happen if we have an AI that cures cancer or like makes the average worker much more productive, hopefully without costing them their job. These folks are thinking about like, well, if the United States is on the precipice of reaching superintelligence, how is China going to react to that? And could that possibly trigger some kind of live war? And there were some war gaming exercises at the conference where people were trying to map that out. And this is just a dimension of this stuff that, again, speaks to how seriously everyone is taking it.
Yeah, this was my favorite session at the event. Actually, I didn't participate in it, but I watched most of it. They had like a 3-hour long, what they called a tabletop exercise where, have you ever did you Model UN in school?
No, but I played Monopoly.
Okay, so it's sort of like Model UN. Basically, you assign people roles, and so one person was the Chinese government, and one person was the U.S. government, and one person was OpenAI, and one person was Elon Musk, and one person was the representative of the press and the public. And they did this exercise where they would basically walk through various sort of checkpoints in the year 2027 and sort of figure out what AI was capable of doing at that point, and then have everyone and in their roles kind of react to that and figure out what they were going to do. And some of the interesting things that happened in that were things like international espionage. At some point, the person who was representing the role of the Russian government, tried to steal the weights of one of the leading AI models. The Chinese government was also conducting espionage to try to steal the sort of models that the U.S. AI companies were building. And then on the sort of domestic front, the person who was playing the role of the U.S. government, at a certain point, Elon Musk in this exercise convinced Donald Trump in the year 2027 to nationalize all three of the leading American AI labs, so Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google DeepMind, and basically install himself as the head of it. And that might, like, all of this is fictional, all of this is a simulation, but it's the kind of thing, these are not sort of like random people playing this tabletop exercise. These are people who are really in the room when some of these issues are being discussed. And the fact that did not seem implausible to them as a potential thing that could happen 2 years and change from now just really made me sit up straight and pay attention, and really made me hope that, like, lawmakers in Washington who actually do have to deal with AI policy on a daily basis, not in a simulated way, are going through these same kinds of exercises.
Yes, absolutely. And for what it's worth, I find that scenario totally plausible, right? Assuming that Musk and Trump's relationship endures in the state that it's in for another 2 or 3 years. Nobody has a savior complex like Elon Musk. And if we're truly on the precipice of reaching superintelligence, it's hard to imagine the U.S. government under any administration just telling private companies, yes, sure, you can wield superintelligence however you see fit. So again, this is why I was glad that we got to spend a couple of days thinking about, okay, what should the relationship be between government and super powerful AI?
Yeah. Casey, what was the most memorable thing that you attended during this conference?
That would have been a session called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, which was hosted by Eliezer Yudkowsky. Eliezer is sort of the original doomer for a couple of decades now. He has been warning about the prospects of super intelligent AI. You know, his view is that there is almost no scenario in which we could build a super intelligence that wouldn't either enslave us or hurt us, kill all of us, right? So he's been telling people from the beginning, we should probably just not build this. And so you and I had a chance to sit in with him. People fired a bunch of questions at him. And, you know, we should say, like, he's a really polarizing figure, and I think is sort of on one extreme of this debate. But I think he was also really early to understanding a lot of harms that have bit by bit started to materialize. And so it was fascinating to spend an hour or so sitting in a room and having and hearing him make his case.
Yeah. And I think to people who aren't sort of steeped in this AI world, like, some of what we're describing may sound quite extreme, and even to some people who are in the AI community, like, these are some voices that are considered fairly extreme in these debates, but these are also people who have been quite influential. Like, Eliezer Yudkowsky, was part of why the original investment in DeepMind was made back when that was an independent company. He sort of introduced Demis Hassabis to Peter Thiel, and these are people who, despite the sort of polarizing nature of their views, have been quite influential inside the world of people who have been thinking in this way for a long time.
Yeah, my case for taking these folks seriously, Kevin, is that this is a community that over a decade ago started to make a lot of predictions that just basically came true, right? They started to look at advancements in machine learning and neural networks and started to connect the dots, and they said, hey, before too long, we're going to get into a world where these models are incredibly powerful. And all that stuff just turned out to be true. So that's why they have credibility with me, right? Everything they believe, we could hit some sort of limit that they didn't see coming. Their model of the world could sort of fall apart. But as they have updated it bit by bit, and as these companies have made further advancements and they've built new products, I would say that this model of the world has basically held so far. And so if nothing else, I think we have to keep this group of folks in mind as we think about, well, what is the next phase of AI going to look like for all of us?
Yeah, I think the thing that I came away feeling is both respect for the people who've been thinking about this stuff for a long time and who have remained relatively consistent on it, but also I feel like the sort of AI safety folks who are sometimes called the doomers, I think they have a messaging problem, and I think that they have a big task of persuasion ahead of them, because if you have been warning about the risks of AI for years and years, as some of these folks have, I just think at a certain point, people start to tune you out,
Yep.
right? There's the kind of crying wolf problem in AI safety. You know, there were people, for example, who thought that GPT-2, the sort of precursor to ChatGPT, was going to be quite dangerous. And it turned out GPT-2 was not dangerous, right? People had the same sorts of concerns about GPT-3 and GPT-4. And then there was that, there were these sort of, after ChatGPT came out, there were all these open letters saying we should pause AI development because this stuff is moving way too fast. And I just think these folks need better evidence for the kinds of claims they're making, because people who are not steeped in this world, who are not you and me, who are not like going to these sorts of events, they look around, they see some harms from AI, but it's not existential harms, right? It's people getting scammed. It's deep fakes showing up on their social media pages. It's like annoyance and a little bit of sort of worry about their jobs being taken away. It's not Dyson spheres by 2040, right?
Right. But Kevin, I actually thought you had a great idea for how this group of folks could fix this, and that was to just make a really good sci-fi movie about AI doom. So can you make the case for somebody making a good AI doom movie?
Yeah, so this was sort of a half-joking suggestion that I made, I think, to Eliezer or some other sort of eminence in the world of AI safety. But my take on this has been informed by just going around talking with people about AI for the last couple of years and realizing that so many of people's ideas about AI are derived from Hollywood, right? They are derived from The Terminator, from Skynet, from Ex Machina, from Her. As a culture, the way we get our ideas about the future and whether we should be excited or scared about what's coming is often through film and through pop culture. And I just haven't seen a lot of really good attempts to sort of distill the scenarios that the sort of more pessimistic folks are worried about into a really compelling story that could actually attract a mainstream audience. Because I think if you took a mainstream audience and like brought them to this conference, people would be like, what the hell are any of these people talking about? What is a Dyson sphere? Why are we talking about paperclip maximizers? And like, there's just so much jargon and inside talk among these folks who have been talking to and with each other for many, many years that it just sort of feels impenetrable and you don't even really know where to start. But if you had a movie that was, made by people who actually understand the trajectory and pace of this technology, I think that could be quite convincing. What do you think?
I think you're so right about this. I think that sci-fi continuously shapes and reshapes the conversation in tech. The movie Her came out a decade ago, and it is still a touch point, it seems like, for everyone at OpenAI in particular as they work on ChatGPT. So I think a movie that really sort of sketched out a still somewhat fantastical but increasingly plausible scenario for how a superintelligence might wind up being extremely harmful, I think would be super useful. And I think it would just be really kind of entertaining. I mean, as we were sitting in Eliezer's talk, he sort of sketched out one of these scenarios. And he was sort of like, look, if you think you're just going to like run away to your cabin, like it's going to be able to find you in the cabin, and maybe it'll just sort of take you out with a drone strike, or maybe you'll just fall sick one day and you'll start coughing and you'll be dead a few days later. I mean, and as he was like describing that, I'm seeing the movie play out in my mind, right? Of like what that would feel like. But I will say, Kevin, that there has been an AI Doom movie that was made this year, and I wonder if you've heard of it. Have you heard of Afraid?
I have not seen it, but I have heard about it in part because I believe that a quote from my conversation with Bing Sidney is like the opening scene of the movie. And so I did get some texts from people saying, have you seen this thing? Well, I have not, but I appreciate it.
Your work has inspired so many horrors. It's really remarkable.
Some people have said that the work itself is a horror film.
I think your editor said that to me once.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
So Afraid, and it's stylized so that the AI in Afraid is capitalized, and it's basically about an experimental AI that takes over a house, and then of course it goes haywire and starts wreaking havoc. So I haven't seen it yet, but it is on one of the big streaming services, and so I'm going to check that out this weekend and see if maybe this is the AI Doom movie you've been requesting.
I mean, one sort of backdrop for all this is that like the general public actually is quite pessimistic about about AI. There's been some data recently that from Pew that shows that the number of Americans who believe that who are more concerned about AI than they're excited about it has risen sharply in the past couple of years. So people are quite worried. But I think if the optimists, the people who believe that AI is going to transform the world for the better, want that narrative to take hold among people who are sort of mainstream media consumers, they should start making some movies where AI is the hero, and that I think could convince people of that too. It doesn't make for as good a film probably because people like doom and horror and thrill, but I think the role of fiction is underappreciated in shaping people's opinions about technology.
Yeah, and I would add that while a sort of utopian movie about AI might feel less compelling just because what is the drama or the conflict there, it's important to note that the people who are at this conference, even though they're super concerned about it, they're working on AI because they think it can do massive amounts of good, right? They do believe that it can cure cancer and all other human disease, right? It's sort of, you name a human challenge and they think that superintelligence is going to be the way that it gets fixed. And so if there is a way of, making the how we cured cancer, using AI and everything that happened afterwards kind of movie, well, that could be kind of good.
So after this Curve conference, are you more optimistic or more pessimistic about AI? Do you feel like we are headed toward the AGI era that people have been warning about for years, or do you think these fears are somewhat overblown?
I mean, the way that I would put it, Kevin, is I came out of that conference just taking AI more seriously, which may sound like a funny thing to say, given that it is, really a primary topic of this podcast. We're interviewing people, every other week about it, and yet sometimes I still feel like I haven't been totally committed to the idea that superintelligence could arrive within the next 5 years or so and starting to grapple with what that might mean. So I left there sort of committed to learning more about this technology, sharing more about what I'm learning, make it sort of more of a primary focus of my reporting, and absolutely taking the risks seriously, but, taking some of the positive outcomes and possibilities seriously too. How about you?
I don't think it really changed my view of AI and AI's trajectory, but I think it's useful to have these kind of gatherings, if only to sort of bring people face to face. I think often these conversations take place on social media where they can become very bitter and very polarized. I don't like how polarized AI discourse has become. I think, these are real challenges and we need to assume that people are trying to solve them in good faith. And what I came away from the Curve thinking and just being reminded of is just that many of the people who work at these companies and who work on this technology are quite sincere. They might be sincerely wrong. They might be wrong, right? We should just say that. These fears might be fantastical. They might never materialize. But I don't think I believe anyone who sort of doubts the sincerity with which these people hold these views. It's not just stuff they say when they're raising money. It's stuff they're talking about in the comfort of their homes, in these more private venues, around the fire at night at the Curve conference. They really do take this stuff quite seriously, and many of them are starting to sort of act on it in ways that I think would surprise people who just think they're saying this to sort of get a rise out of people.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to have a big 2025, Kevin.
Yes, and that may be the last year.
Yep. So if there's any loved ones you'd like to say some goodbyes to, really make the most out of this Christmas. Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.